My name is Michael Romero. I'm the owner of Romero Architects, architecture firm based in Hyattsville, Maryland. Hyattsville is just outside of Washington, D.C. I've been in business here in Hyattsville for about 12 years after a time away in London pursuing a master's and working in advocating for sustainable and traditional architecture and urbanism. The work that I mainly do is in residential architecture. The bulk of it is working in historic homes, renovating, adding on, and also in this region, helping people and families who own homes that are later in the 20th century that perhaps don't have as much character as the previous generation's homes did. Instilling those homes with things like front porches and taller than usual windows, and creating more character and bringing in more character that is missing in some of the later homes of the 20th century. I am involved in this work because of how I was educated, I guess. When I was young, I lived in a college town, Norman, Oklahoma, in a house from the 1930s, in a traditional neighborhood next to the campus of University of Oklahoma. And it wasn't until high school that I realized I wanted to be an architect. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that growing up in a walkable neighborhood with beautiful traditional houses really influenced me and impacted me. My education was at the University of Notre Dame, which is one of the only schools in the country to focus and use classical architecture, traditional architecture, and urbanism as the basis, as the foundation for education. So when I look at architecture, I look at the whole picture, including the context, including the neighborhood, the street, what else the site brings. And in that way, I feel like I've been able to see architecture as different types of architecture, as different types of language. So a house that is built in the 1880s, we call it a Victorian, that's a language. There's subsets within that language. So for example, a Queen Anne has certain elements, certain patterns that are slightly different than a folk Victorian, which is, there could be from the same era. They're in a similar language, but they're slightly different. And language for me is a great way to frame it, because while we all speak a version of English in this country, for example, there are many different dialects, many different patterns of language within the English language, depending on where you are in the country. So as I said, I grew up in a traditional walkable neighborhood. My house was built in 1938, where I grew up, and it had a big front porch. It was white siding with double hung windows, and on my street there was a variety of houses of similar era, but different styles, different languages, you could say, but they were all working together. I live now in Hyattsville, in the historic district of Hyattsville. I've always tended to be someone who was interested in being and living in walkable neighborhoods with beautiful architecture, access to things like coffee shops and a nice restaurant, the local school where my kids can walk to school, trying to focus for my own life and my own personal life, for my family, those ideals, because I think that that was always important to me. And Hyattsville, in this neighborhood, is a historic district designated in the 1970s. And within the historic district, there are a series of what they call contributing properties, special houses that we could say are listed. I think there's about 25 to 30 of those. I am very fortunate. My family and I live in one. It's a Queen Anne house from 1887. And as you walk around our neighborhood here in Hyattsville, it's exactly what I was just describing about my neighborhood in Norman, Oklahoma. There are a variety of houses from a variety of eras, but what prevails is the sense of belonging, of beauty, of comfort, whether it be a large Queen Anne house from 1887 or a smaller bungalow from the 1920s or 30s, or in some instances infill smaller ranch houses from the 1960s. Everything is playing a major part in this idea of a comfortable, walkable, beautiful neighborhood street. From the actual architecture of the houses, the elements of the houses, from the porches to the gables, to the detail of the houses themselves, to the placement of the houses, the rhythm of the houses, as well as the personal stamp that decades of owners have put on the houses themselves. One of the other projects that I have been a part of over the last few years in our neighborhood was the redevelopment of the WSSC headquarters. The WSSC is the regional water utility. They were headquartered here for about 80 years. They left in 1991, and this out of character building sat vacant for 30 years. It was a 4-story mid-20th century slab building and next to a parking lot.